For well over 2 centuries, the US Postal Service has promised daily delivery. There's something going on, it appears, where some of the mail that should take a day is taken a week. Sometimes it's taken weeks and months. To what do you attribute that?
There's probably multiple reasons.
This week, our full measure investigation, Snail Mail, raising bigger questions about a badly broken system.
If I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly.
President Trump wants to turn education back to the states, and he's naming names.
What did you think when you heard that?
Word travels fast when the president of our country gives a shout out to our state.
The buzzsaw effect and antics of the Department of Government Efficiency cuts both ways in Congress.
These are people's lives. Have a little, just a smidgen of empathy, maybe?
I'm 100% aligned with Elon, Doge, and President Trump.
This week, 2 outspoken members of Congress about the cuts and consequences. Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. 250 years into its existence, the US Postal Service is at a pivotal crossroads, stuck in a dead letter pile of delays, deficits, and doubt, with $9.5 billion in losses last year alone, and mail sometimes taking weeks just across town. Today, a Full Measure investigation has exclusive inside information and photos in our cover story, Snail Mail. The first thing you should know is, if you think your mail delivery has been sluggish, it's not your imagination. Is it taking longer than it did when you were in the 1980s?
It absolutely is taking longer than 1980s.
Mark Dimenstein is president of the American Postal Workers Union. He's helping us dig into the delays dragging down deliveries. There's something going on, it appears, where some of the mail that should take a day is taken a week. Sometimes it's taken weeks and months. To what do you attribute that?
There's probably multiple reasons. Some of it is this challenging transition. Some of it is short staffing.
The mail trail to today's mess is a long and winding route.
Farewell, Pony. Modern methods to move a mountain of mail far faster than any man in your era could have ever dreamed possible.
The U.S. Postal Service has been a cornerstone of American communication since it was created in 1775 under the first Postmaster General, Benjamin Franklin.
Letters are most important, so Mr. Dolan sorts them first. He puts the letters for each family in their own place.
In 1970, the USPS transitioned from a government department to an independent entity.
Sacks are opened and the mail spews out. After coding, this magnetic ink reading machine sorts the letters completely automatically.
Modern automation promised to zip mail to every U.S. address, while the USPS remained financially self-supporting. But in modern times, it's delivered a troubling decline in speed and cost-effectiveness. The USPS aims for 95% on-time delivery, but stretched on time from 3 days to 5 in 2021 as part of cost-cutting measures. This year's first quarter claimed 86% success, but self-reported stats lacking independent proof leave skeptics thinking it's worse. Even postal workers at USPS processing centers are frustrated by the sorting nightmare they face. Delivery standards have been reduced from top-down mandates by management, one source tells me. Mail used to come in today and be gone tonight. Now it comes in, sits and rots, and eventually leaves when the old stuff is pointed out by the workers. Full Measure obtained images of mail sitting not for days but weeks at one processing center. This letter marked "Return to Sender" took 18 days to get attention at the processing center. Seriously, I could have walked it there in less time. I see this sort of thing routinely, says an insider. 44 certified mail letters were found apparently forgotten. A worker on site noted on one letter that the customer paid $10.24 to have it sit in this abandoned tray for 9 days so far. Other certified mail stamped January 29th and 31st was still sitting there 2 weeks later on February 13th. Mail stamped January 8th was still sitting, being stored on February 1st. The mail backup was so large, 23 all-purpose containers were filled with an estimated 184,000 pieces of backlogged mail.
And we're proud public servants.
Dimmenstein, the union president, pins the logjam on a 2021 cost-saving misstep, a pilot program for a regional transportation optimization plan. What's an example of something that could happen with a local letter going to a nearby address before this change?
Well, when I came into the post office in 1983, everything stayed local.
But the pilot program sent local letters on far-flung detours to distant hubs, delaying even next-door deliveries.
I'll give you an example. They had decided to take mail from Medford, Oregon, where there's a small processing plant, to Portland, Oregon. It's a 6-hour truck ride. That's an absurdity. Now, if you're taking a package from Medford, Oregon, and you're sending it to Boston, Massachusetts, it may make perfect sense to consolidate in Portland, fill up the trucks, fill up the airplanes, and it makes the whole process more efficient. But that same package that I'm mailing from Medford to Medford, if it goes on a 6-hour truck ride, it's going to be delayed by at least a day, if not more, each way. So those are the kind of things that we certainly have made strong appeals to management on. That is not good service.
A recent Inspector General report criticized the Regional Transportation Optimization Plan, finding that it slowed mail without yielding the promised savings. So back in the olden days, way before your time and before my time, from what I understand, the mail came 6 or 7 days a week. It came twice a day,
yes,
right?
It did at one point.
David Murrow is with the Government Accountability Office, or GAO. It's studied many facets of the Postal Service's problems. What would you say is the current state of the U.S. postal system?
So it's poor. It's in poor financial condition, and it's been that way for a long time.
Is there a simple answer as to why it's existed in such a poor state for such a long time?
So its business model is fundamentally unsustainable.
Financially, the USPS is delivering staggering losses, $9.5 billion in fiscal year 2024 alone. Since 2007, cumulative losses exceed $98 billion, with unfunded liabilities and debt hovering around $143 billion as of 2018.
So most of what their money goes to is compensation to deliver the mail. So that's compensation in terms of pay, that's benefits for their employees, health benefits. That's about 75% of what USPS is paying for. Another 10% or so is for transportation, moving that stuff around the country, and the rest is for everything else, the facilities, the marketing costs, all the other things that USPS does.
The 2021 Delivering for America plan aimed to trim $30 to $36 billion over a decade by consolidating hubs and slower rural delivery. But it's misdelivered, and Postmaster General Louis DeJoy recently resigned. Now President Trump is eyeing a fix, floating a USPS merger with the Commerce Department under Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Well, we want to have a post office that works well and doesn't lose massive amounts of money. And we're thinking about doing that, and it'll be a form of a merger, but it'll remain the Postal Service, and I think it'll operate a lot better than it has been over the years. It's been just a tremendous loser for this country. Tremendous amounts of money are being lost.
What are some of the options that we could do with the Postal Service beyond the current model?
Yeah, so you could have it become a governmental entity again, where Congress basically subsidizes the Postal Service to keep it financially stable. You could privatize all or part of the Postal Service and try and deal with it there. You could do a mix of subsidies for some very specific tasks that the Postal Service does, where it runs like a business, and others. All those are going to have trade-offs, both for the taxpayer and the postal customer, so it's important for Congress to think those through. But the bottom line is the current model doesn't work, so something needs to change.
There's a lot of new talk about privatizing the Postal Service or taking it over or putting it up under the Commerce Department. And I just want the listeners to realize how dangerous that is to their postal services. And the reason it's so dangerous is because the post office, by law, has to go to every single address 6 days a week, and sometimes 7, but by law, 6 days a week. If the post office were to be privatized, and what privatization means is it's going to be broken up and sold off to private corporations who would then make their decisions of where to send, where to go, as to whether they can make a profit.
I've traveled every road in this here land. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man.
After decades of navigating its troubles, the USPS is still trying to find a return address to reliability. The question, can the Trump administration deliver a plan that finally gets it all sorted out?
Cedar City, Dodge City, what a pity. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
For more on the story, listen to my podcast, Full Measure, After Hours. Ahead on Full Measure, President Trump wants states, not the federal government, to run local schools. We'll visit one place where that's already happening. President Trump has pledged to shut down the Department of Education. 1,300 employees have already been laid off. The idea is to return control to states and local communities and eliminate bureaucratic inefficiencies. Scott Thuman found out what that looks like in one state that already wrested itself from the grip of federal oversight and found a blueprint for success.
First, I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to have you guys write this down.
What's happening here in Indiana classrooms, getting some presidential praise.
What I want to do is let the states run schools. If I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly.
What did you think when you heard that?
Word travels fast when the president of our country gives a shout out to our state.
Katie Jenner is Indiana's Secretary of Education.
We have people who have rolled up their sleeves to really, really stay focused on student outcomes in areas like reading, making sure kids have access to STEM, making sure our high schools are as valuable as possible for kids.
The path to national recognition was set up a decade ago when Indiana dumped Common Core, a widely used approach to education that set state academic standards in math and English.
I'm going to give y'all 30 seconds to find a partner.
Now the state sets its own, including year-round learning programs for students, tax credits for tutoring, and an intense focus on reading.
If really we know by the end of third grade, if a child can read or not, why are we taking that main assessment at the end of third grade? Why don't we take it in second grade? Now we know exactly where to intervene and who to support.
There are signs it's working. Between 2022 and 2024, Indiana's 4th and 8th graders jumped from the bottom 20 states to 6th in the nation in reading.
Muscular bonds can be broken to form energy.
Another overhaul, says Jenner, is with the state's oldest students.
I think our opportunity and really our push in Indiana is, how do we light the fire of purpose in kids and show them their value and what's possible? So we did a massive high school diploma overhaul.
Graduates can still earn a standard diploma, but Indiana redesigned the high school experience to be more personalized and aligned with students' future goals. Students now choose a pathway, whether that's preparing for college, entering the workforce, or enlisting in the military, with coursework tailored to support their chosen direction.
You think the decisions and the moves that the state has been making are paying off in the classroom?
Absolutely.
Angel Jackson Anderson is the principal at Believe Circle City High School, a charter school in Indianapolis. She says extending courses through what used to be a summer break is paying dividends.
Every year, educators have been trying to figure out, what are we going to do to get our kids across? What I've seen with summer learning labs is the amount of growth that kids are getting in a very short amount of time. Seems like kids are growing at rapid rates.
Murrow Tyson, a sophomore here at Circle City, is one of those kids.
What's your favorite subject?
Math. He told me that I could do mechanical engineer program.
For his mom, Shawanda Tyson, the summer programs have been a game changer.
You can choose a STEM summer variety. You could choose a multi-activity summer learning labs. He gets morals, values, education. They teach him. They take them on trips. It's a sense of belonging.
Despite the state's push to improve student outcomes, private donations have been crucial to making it happen.
Do you have to have more support outside of state taxes to be successful?
The public dollars in a tight economy can be tough to come by. The private dollars, though, a lot of times give that boost of funding to really allow that sustainability to continue, even when the state or federal dollars may be more questionable.
Could that derail your efforts at all?
I am not concerned at all about the conversation regarding the U.S. Department of Education. As states, we already set our standards. What I absolutely have my eye on right now is how might we leverage the moment to get more flexibility in how we use those federal dollars.
A lesson in how more flexibility lets states prioritize local needs without federal barriers. For Full Measure, Scott Thuman in Indiana.
Coming up on Full Measure, Congress and Doge duke it out over budget control. Taxpayers cheer the idea of cutting government waste, fraud, and abuse. But Washington, D.C. lawmakers, cozy with big donors, often fight that, kicking and screaming. President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, originally led by Elon Musk, is shaking things up and has Congress buzzing. Today, we dive into the clash with a staunch Doge supporter and a fierce critic on Capitol Hill. Led by Elon Musk and using a chainsaw approach, the Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, claims to be on target for $2 trillion in savings. In one 48-hour period last month, Doge said it worked to eliminate 226 contracts valued at over $1 billion. The exact totals are subject to debate, but there's no doubt that President Trump's creation has made significant progress.
Billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse.
Cutting waste remains immensely popular among taxpayers footing the bill. Polls show 70% view government spending as wasteful. The same percentage is angry about federal waste, fraud, and abuse, and 77% support spending reviews. Yet the chainsaw approach rankles Senator Angus King.
That Constitution is under the most direct and consequential assault in our nation's history.
He's a registered independent who typically votes with Democrats.
Seeing Elon Musk on that stage with a chainsaw and dark glasses and a big grin, well, come on, have a little, just a smidgen of empathy maybe, and to obviously enjoy it. I think that's a real problem.
Even worse, he says, Doge poses a constitutional threat.
Well, the perfect example is almost the first weekend of the administration when Doge shut down AID. AID is a program created by Congress. And the same thing with the Department of Education, and the same thing with the independent agencies. Congress created those agencies. If the president wants to get rid of them, you come to Congress, they pass a bill and say, we're going to get rid of Department of Education or whatever it is. It's the president, no matter who it is, doesn't get to choose and say, I don't like this program, so we're not going to fund it. I like this one, so we're going to fund it, maybe move some money. That's not the way it works. If all power ends up in one set of hands, that's dangerous. That's where liberty starts to disappear. And that's what is really bothering me about this.
Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't see Doge as a constitutional threat.
This hearing of the subcommittee on delivering on government efficiency will come to order. I'm 100% aligned with Elon, Doge, and President Trump.
Green heads up a congressional subcommittee created to work with the White House Doge office. She says the danger comes if overspending isn't addressed.
From where I see it, this is a threat to literally everyone in the country's future. This is a threat if we do not fix the $36 trillion debt that grows every single year, because everyone hears $36 trillion and they're like, oh, it's a lot of money. But there's compounding interest every single year. And this year's compounding interest on top of the $36 trillion is going to be close to $1 trillion, bigger than our military budget. And so from my perspective, this requires action.
Agencies in the crosshairs of Doge for significant cuts or eliminations so far include U.S. Agency for International Development, the U.S. Institute of Peace, U.S. African Development Foundation, Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, Woodrow Wilson Center, Department of Education, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But no agencies have been fully closed, due largely to legal challenges and congressional barriers. What is your take so far on how much Doge can do, obviously meeting up with challenges, and I think even behind the scenes from some Republicans who may publicly support the efforts but not really want things cut?
Right.
What is your take so far on progress made versus progress stalled?
Yeah, that's a deep question. So Doge in concept is the most common sense, non-political thing you can do in Congress. It's actually what we should be doing anyways. It's so simple on its face, and that's why I love it. So here in Congress, it's very complicated. We have a lot of members of Congress who the only way they can raise money is through lobbyists with their causes and their industries they represent. So they will guard those with their life or their career, their political career, we should say. And then there's a lot of our Republican colleagues and Democrats too. Now, Democrats don't want to agree with anything Doge because they can't. It seems to be the sworn enemy. Elon Musk and Doge is sworn enemy of the Democrat Party right now, but they're struggling with it because they actually agree with a lot of it.
Doge is scheduled to delete itself, as Musk has said, or dissolve on July 4th next year on America's 250th birthday. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Next week on Full Measure, you've rarely heard a sitting member of Congress say these things in public.
I think the uniparty here is on the same path they were on before President Trump was elected.
A no-holds-barred interview with Republican Thomas Massie next week on Full Measure. See you then.